Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I'm going to show you how to make two different cards using the same set of stamps. This is the Woodland Harvest stamp set that I designed for Rubber Stamp Tapestry, and it's a fall themed stamp set. But I feel that if I'm going to make a product that you guys are going to allow into your craft room to take up space, then it needs to do a few different things. It has to do more than just one specific thing. So I'm going to show you how to do this scene here and then how I adapted it to make a spring card. So the stamps are the same. This big tree here, I used just the branches to make this kind of rose border frame. And of course, I teamed this up with my peg stamps. And all of these stamps can be found from our sponsor, Rubber Stamp Tapestry. You can find them online at pegstamps.com. And don't forget to check out the video description for this month's coupon code. So I even use the same stamp set in here. These are the, I'll just show you really quick, the Wisteria frame, English lavender, and Muscari and hyacinth border. And just by changing the colors, you get a whole different look here. I thought it'd be pretty to do mums, but I didn't have any little tiny mum stamps. So just by stamping these spiky flowers in fall colors, it gives you the impression that you could have mums or any sort of fall blooming flower. And I think when you can use the same stamps to get different looks, you feel better about your purchases and you feel better about the stuff that you hang on to and the supplies that you have in your craft room, because you always feel better when you use your materials. So the first thing we're going to start off with is a piece of cardstock, and this is a quarter sheet here. It is Nina 80-pound Solar White Classic Crest. So the Classic Crest cardstock is nice and smooth, and the reason I'm using this is because I'm going to be using alcohol pens to do some coloring. So we're going to be doing masking, so I'm just going to show you this card again really quickly. We're going to begin with our closest object, and that would be our cute little plump squirrel. And I made him a gray squirrel because if you have squirrels, you'll probably know that the gray squirrels are the more friendly squirrels and the red squirrels are the ones with the bad attitudes that like to, you know, go up in your attic and chew on things, and they're kind of pests, and the gray squirrels are just kind of doing their own thing. And they're fairly harmless. I'm going to stamp this down here towards the bottom. Oops, I got a little ink on that side. I'm just going to flip her over there. And I'm going to try to keep this fairly straight. I've stamped him crooked so many times. And just give it a second for the ink to transfer. Now on my stamps, I've mentioned it before, but if you're new, you can mount these on cling foam, but what I did was I just painted some aleenes, tack it over and over, glue on the back, let it dry, and now it's permanently sticky so I can keep using it on my blocks, and that works really well for me. So I have already cut a mask for this, and we've done other videos about masking. Basically, you stamp an image on a post-it note, and then you can keep it and use it over and over again to do the masking technique. And the reason you do the masking technique is because it lets you combine a bunch of stamps together as if they were all one stamp. So it gives you more versatility, and it lets you use all of your stamps together to create an unlimited number of new scenes. And it's such a wonderful technique, and if you save your masks, it really doesn't take you a lot of extra time. So I'm going to stamp this over the squirrel, but a little bit higher so it'll be behind him in the scene. And again, give it a couple seconds for the ink to transfer. There's no rush here. We're crafting, we're enjoying ourselves. There we go, we got a great impression. And now I'm going to put my mask for that. Actually I have two because I forgot I previously had cut one, and then I cut another one yesterday. I thought I'd cut it, and I didn't see it stuck to the back of my little stamp storage sheet, but there it was this morning when I went to look. Losing my mind, I tell you. And then lastly, we're going to stamp this big tree here. Remember, you can use the branches to do a border if you want to do that. It gives you kind of like a little nestled in secret garden effect, or, you know, use it as a tree. Always look at your supplies and think of all the different ways you can use them. Oftentimes, we rush out to buy a new stamp and we've got something in our stash that'll do the same thing. And I want this to kind of go off the edge because I feel like it gives you a better, gives you a little more perspective. You just want to make sure each element that you stamp, you're going a little bit further back in the scene. Okay, so now what I want to do is some stamping inside of the stump. The stump is kind of hollowed out, and I'm going to use my peg stamps for that. I'm going to start off with this one that's, it looks like grasses. It's actually stems, but I like to use it for grasses. And I'm going to stamp some of those in here. And I just line up all my ink pads right over to the edge so I can quickly stamp what I want to stamp, and I'm going to use a lighter green for this little foliage here. And I will list all the stamp sets that I used. And if I got any like little smudges from my ink blocks, my stamping blocks, because I'm a wicked slob, I don't clean my stamp blocks as often as I should, I will go ahead and list all of those that I showed you, even from the spring card, so that if you want to find them, you can. And I wanted to put some ferns in there. I actually have a couple ferns to pick from, and these are all the peg stamps. I'm going to do right there, maybe over the edge here, and we'll do some over here too. I think I like this one from Dogwood Forest a little bit better than the one from Red Geranium, but use what, if you have one and not the other, then you know, use what you have, or you can combine them in different colors of ink. I think I'm just going to use the one today. I did use both here because I used that big one from Red Geranium in the center and then did some smaller ones off to the edge. So it all works. It's up to you. And now some pretty flowers. I've got a variety of spiky flowers. Some are lavender, some are hyacinth. I've even used wisteria for this too. So, you know, just look for the shapes you're going for. I keep all my peg stamps together and I just use them kind of interchangeably. There's also this little seed pod, which I think is kind of neat looking. I want to put in a couple times. It's not really going to show up that much, but I feel like it adds quite a bit, you know, just to get that extra depth. Now I generally like to go biggest to smallest with these, so I think I'll start off with this fuller one here and go in with some yellow, some mellow yellow, and that a couple times. And remember, all of your peg stamps have a line on the side, and what that's for is to line up the bottom of the stamp. So if I was doing, like, for instance, this lavender, let's say I want to put that in there, that line on the side is going to be the bottom of the stem, so that helps me when I go to stamp this down. I know where the end's going to be, so I don't have this kind of like just randomly sticking anywhere. I don't have it upside down or crooked. I can make it kind of come out from the middle. Okay, so pay attention to that as you're stamping, and it will really serve you well, will really help you out getting everything lined up really well. And the great thing about the mask is that you can stamp right over it and it will look like those things are in the front of your arrangement. And I've got this nice little arrangement of little flowers there. I think I'm going to do that in a red. That would also be pretty in like an eggplant plum color. I try to choose a palette at the beginning and try to stick with that palette so I don't end up with too many random elements. Now the next thing I want to do is actually quickly put some color down, and this is going to save me a lot of time when I go to do my marker work. And what I like to do this with is these blending brushes, and I've been using these Judykins ones for a long time. They're basically like shaving brushes. I know that Tim Holtz is coming out with a couple. I just saw them like released at CHA, and those look really nice too. I think they're going to be quite a bit more expensive than these, but you know, if you like those because they have caps on them, you know, go for it. You do you. Get whatever is going to suit you. These suit me just fine, so I'm going to stick with these. Okay, so I'm getting this blue in the sky. If I do need to get around something small, then I just kind of pinch my bristles together and just kind of squiggle the color in. And I'm also going to do a little bit of a darker blue right around the edges. You can use any of your dye ink pads are going to work for this. If you're really good at sponging, you can do sponging. I mess up cards when I do sponging more than anything. I like that I can get a really nice subtle look when I do this. And I'm going to use this grass green here. It's nice fresh green. See, I mean, it doesn't get much easier than this. I'm just kind of dabbing it on. And we will add some like shadows and stuff with our markers, right? But this is just going to give us a nice body of color, and it's so much quicker. I'm just going to bring it up here so that the colors can meet. And then for some shadows, I'm going to use some brown. I've got this brown, and I'll use the same, like this is my upstairs setup. I have like 6 of these, maybe 8 of these brushes up here, and I just grab the one that's closest to whatever color I want to pounce on there, and it works great. You don't have to have one for every color, unlike a sponge where you kind of do, because it holds so much ink. These don't as much, so So you don't need so many, which is good because they can be a little expensive when you start to, it adds up, you know, it adds up every tool you get. And I think I want to just dab in a little bit of orange in here, like to symbolize like some foliage in the background, maybe some shrubs or something, just nothing too specific, just some kind of like, you know, some fall foliage in the distance there. Another thing I want to do is the stamping of the leaves. So all you need here is a simple leaf. You could make this any kind of tree you want. Maple trees are beautiful in the fall, so that's what I'm doing. And this is from the Summer's End peg stamp set. But again, look through what you have and see if you have something that's going to work. And I'm going to start off with my yellow, and I'm just going to go in and stamp a bunch of yellow leaves. And again, our registration mark would be the tip of the stem of the leaf, like that. So I just try to make sure I turn it so whatever branch I'm coming off of, it makes sense. And I'm going to do a few green ones because you get that, like when it's just starting to be autumn, you get those, you get the trees are just starting to turn. They haven't really turned yet. They still have a little bit of green on them. And maple leaves are gorgeous because they can have all the colors in one leaf. You can have green and you can have red and yellow, and it's so pretty. And that's just on one leaf, so I know that this is going to be appropriate to have this on all these colors. Some trees aren't going to be as interesting color-wise in the fall. And now I do need to clean it here because I'm going to be going into my oranges, and if I have green on there, it's going to make brown and it might contaminate my ink pad. So we'll do some of this kind of light orange. And I love orange near blue, just vibrates and it looks so pretty because they're opposites. Into a darker orange here. It's almost like a paprika color. That might be the name of it. I'm not 100% sure. Get some of these in here. I think I want to go back to that orange a little bit. Now if you do end up over stamping, I haven't trimmed the edges on this stamp yet. So if that happens and you end up with like a little bit of you know, like a little bit of a halo, just go in with a darker color. Like I'll go in with this nice bright red here, and I'll just carefully stamp it there so I can kind of hit any of those areas where maybe I overstamped a little bit and I got some halo. Certainly do not throw away your card over that. It is still fixable. It takes a lot for me to throw away a card. It's got to be pretty egregious what I've done to it. It's usually pretty fixable. And if you have any places where your ink skipped, you can either fill that in with a marker, or you can try stamping some more leaves over it and get a little bit of fullness there while you're at it. Maybe one more red one right in here. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And now we can remove our masks and see what we got going on here. And we can color these with our markers. Now I didn't cut my mask out right there because I felt like the tree roots always wanted to lift when I did that. So what I'm going to do is actually you know what, I think I'll just actually grab a little paintbrush, pick up my ink and just kind of wiggle it in there. Now I'll just have to make sure to wash this paintbrush so that next time I go to use it with watercolor I don't have a surprise. And grab a little brown. And any place that maybe my mask moved or wasn't stuck down properly, I can just go in and touch up. And you can use those stencil brushes for that, or any small stiff paintbrush you have. It'll work just fine. So like I said, you know, it's fixable. Whatever. There's no mistake that's not fixable. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more because we are going to use some markers. I'm going to put my inks away so I don't accidentally stick my hand in it. One thing I want to do though before I do that is I have this little, it's just a little wooden blank. It's like a, almost like a wooden nickel. And I want to stamp the little acorn from the set on there because that is going to make our embellishment. And I think it looks so cool because if you don't do anything to it, you just stamp on it, it looks like it's been wood burned. And I colored it a little bit, and I also made it look like it was a slice of wood. Look at that. I mean, just that alone I think looks so fantastic. And here I had colored it, and I colored the edge and made it look like a little slice of tree. So you can look at those side by side and decide what's best for you, but these little wooden pieces can be found at any craft store, and they're not very expensive. They come in like a pack of 20 or something like that. The first thing we're going to color is our little squirrel, and I'm using Warm Gray 6. And these are my Studio 71 markers. They are just really inexpensive, especially for a brush tip marker. And I like to have the set of 48 upstairs in my office just because I feel like I can get pretty much any color combination I want from just those few colors, so it works good for me. Now I'm moving on to neutral gray 5. You know, if you had a big set of markers, you could do all warm grays or all neutral grays, but I don't in this set, so I am going to be overlapping to blend. And I'm going over the warm gray 6 with the neutral gray 5, and also going out a little bit because this is just a touch lighter. And then I'm going to grab my neutral gray 2 and go over where the previous color and just kind of spread it out, and that's going to help everything blend. Because I'm working on the Nina Classic Crest, it just really helps everything blend really easily. And I'm going to grab my clear blender, and I'm going to use a chisel edge because I feel like when I am trying to force colors to blend and lighten, I find the chisel edge I can push more firmly without worrying about damaging the tip, and I can force blends a little bit easier that way. And then I'm going to do that lighter gray again, the neutral gray 2. I'm going to use that for the tail, and that's really all there is to that. I don't, my coloring's not super fancy, but it, you know, I think it looks nice on a card, and I think it's appropriate for the amount of time you're going to spend on a card. Now for the rocks in here, I think I'm going to grab a darker gray. The darkest, it's not the darkest, but one of the darker ones is a cool gray 7. I'm just going to throw some shadows on those rocks back there, and then I'll go in with my warm gray 6, and a little bit mid-tone, and then go in with my neutral gray 2 and add some highlight. And that's really all I need to do for those rocks. Now for the stump, I'm going to start with this E10 and put in my darkest shadows. I like to work dark to light. If you don't, if you have a way you prefer to work, you go ahead and do that. For me, it's a, if I'm using a good marker paper that blends all right, I really like this technique because it saves time. And I feel like when I go light to dark, a lot of times I am just redoing the same steps over and over again, and it just seems kind of foolish to me. And I'm doing the inside of the stump there because that's going to be shadowed and a little bit darker. Now I'm going in with E6 Hazelnut, and I am going to put in everything. I'm going to go over those shadows, and I'm going to do everything except for what's going to be a brighter highlight. And you know, take as much time as you like with your coloring. Obviously, I don't want this video to be 3 hours long, so I'm going to zip right along here. And then I'm going to go with YR3, Yellow Red 3 Beige. And if I am going to try to force a blend, I'm going to use my chisel tip. It also helps your brush tips last longer because you're not trying to force things together with a brush tip, which is a soft tip. Use this fern one when you want to make things blend. And then I'm just doing the ridge of the stump where the wood's been cut because that would be dried out and lighter. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to zoom out, and then I'm going to add a little bit of detail to the ground. Okay, so something that's really easy to do is to grab a light gray marker, and this is good if you don't have a lot of markers. You can go in and add shadow just by taking a light gray and overlapping, because markers are transparent. The things underneath are going to show, right? So you can go and add shadows that way. It's kind of foolproof. And if you're limited on time, it's a great way to go. You could also go in with more shades of green and do it that way. Now if you feel like you want to alter further, you can go with colored pencils. I grabbed a few of my chameleon pencils because you get so many different shades. You get 2 shades on every pencil. They're harder than a Prismacolor, but the fact that there's 2 colors, you can just flip and shade so easily. And the price has come down on them recently, so that's kind of nice. If you want to add some details like grasses, I would recommend grabbing a dark green marker. This is the YG7, yellow green 7. And use the chisel tip because you're going to get a finer point that way. And you can go ahead and just flick up some grasses. Now if it looks too stark, don't worry, I'm going to give you a tip for fixing that. I want to put a little shadow into the tree back there. And some bigger grasses right off the bottom of the card. That's going to help give it a little scale. So if you think, wow, that's really stark, I don't like that, go in with your lighter green. This is the BG3, and you can use the brush tip there, and you can just kind of dab around the bottoms of it, and you can add a little color that way. And just by stippling, which means like tapping with the point of your marker, you can actually add little vignettes of shadow, and you can kind of draw the eye through the scene. And I like to kind of somehow work in some sort of zigzag pattern, and that's what I'm trying to do here, so you can kind of guide the viewer's eye through the scene of your card. And people won't know why it looks fabulous. It's just going to be, you've got this trick where you have used a design element to pull the viewer through the scene, and I just really like that. And you can go with more detail if you want, like I said, with the pencils. If you wanted to, you know, add a little bit more to the stump, you can. Pencils are so great, especially if you don't have a lot of markers. Just going in and adding a little bit of shadow and detail, it can really make the difference between your art looking okay and looking really great. And you know, a handful of colored pencils to go with a handful of markers really can give you a lot of bang for your buck. Like being able to flip between the lighter and the darker color on one pencil. It's a lot of fun. I should use these a lot more often. I actually took them with me sketching to Campobello Island, and they were just really great to have because, I mean, I didn't have to carry so much and I had a lot of variety. And if you want to brighten up the squirrel, you could like take a white pencil and you could, you know, mine's pretty, the highlight's pretty good on that, but you know, if you maybe didn't have that clear blender, you could go with the white pencil, you could go in with your grays and you know, add to that. Completely up to you. So now we're ready to build our card because our coloring's pretty well done. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. And let's take a look at our card here so we know what we're going for. So here we have this this little acorn. I think I might leave this one plain, but I will show you how to do the kind of make it look like it's a slice of wood. And that we're going to do with our markers. Start with a lighter marker and do just like a kind of trace it around like that. And this would be kind of the bark. Okay, then you want to grab a darker marker and use the chisel tip, and this is going to help you get a random edge and just kind of trace the inside of that, and that's going to give you that kind of like, a lot of times the bark wants to separate from the middle part of the wood, so it gives you that kind of shadow there. And then I'm just going to color the outside, and I'm going to need to go in with a darker marker because that's not quite dark enough. So it's basically just getting those tones in there that's going to make it look realistic. And then I just did the acorn itself. I don't want to use a brush tip for that. I'm afraid it might damage it, being wood. And then, like, if you want to color the acorn, I used colored pencils, and then I went over with a clear blending marker and blended my colors so they kind of stain the wood. Actually, you want me to, how about I show you that? Because, we'll zoom in, I'll show you that. Because, well, let's look at them side by side, so you know, you can tell. Hopefully that's not going to leave a mark there. So you can see what you like better. Alright, and I'm going to show you how to do that, because that doesn't make sense. You can stop the video and you can look at it closer if you want to, and then you'll be able to see how to do this as well. So again, I'm using these pencils. I need a green one. My green one is right here. I'm going to do a little bit of green. Okay, this is a fairly smooth acorn, not acorn, a smooth piece of wood. You don't have to be too fussy because we're going to be blending it. We're tinting. Think about like tinting a photo, because that's really what this technique is like. And then I'll go in with this darker one. These are hard pencils, so you can color pretty firmly here without worrying about wearing down your lead or breaking the lead. And then all I'm going to do is take my clear blending marker, where are we? Right here, and I'm going to use the chisel end. And I'm going to dissolve the ink. Alcohol will dissolve colored pencil. And then just make sure that when you're done, you scribble it. Because look at all that pencil it picked up. You scribble it on a, oh, you couldn't even see that. I'll show you there. See, you scribble that off so you clean off the tip before you put it away. And that way you won't end up clogging the tip. That's why I don't use the brush tip, because you don't want to clog up that brush tip. They're too expensive. And there, when that dries, that's going to look like this. It just takes a few minutes for the alcohol to kind of wick away. But really fun, really easy to do. If you feel like you want to lighten up the bark a little bit, just use your white color pencil. Okay, I have my cutting mat here because we're going to do something kind of fun and kind of different than what I did here, because I'd already glued down this panel when I came up with the idea of cutting away around my little slice here and showing some of the background through. For one, I had to actually cut into a new piece of paper to mat this, and for another thing, I think it looks cool when you have kind of a reveal and you get that little shadow from your main panel. So we're going to do that. I have already die cut the bottom of a piece of 4.5 by 6.5 cardstock, so or pattern paper. So I like to cut up a piece of cardstock into quarters when I'm making cards. But then if I want to use it on a 5 by 7 card like this, you can see I've got all this space left over and it looks a little awkward. So one way I like to mat the 5 by 7 cards is by using a 4.5 by 6.5 mat stack. And you can get these pads of pattern paper at the craft store like that. They're very inexpensive and they're perfectly sized for layering on cards. I find them to be a lot better than 6 by 6 pads for me, because I do more card making than scrapbooking. So that's something to kind of keep in mind if you like to do more cards and scrapbooks. So to get this effect right here, I used a die, and these are some fun dies from Stampendous. And what's really nice is that these are border dies, so this cut out the middle, like the guts of the design, but it didn't cut out the edges. So I could put this anywhere on my paper and it's going to stay intact. So I thought that was really fun. And I also did that with this card. This whole like pale pink panel is one piece, and I just used a border die on either end, but then I decided it needed a mat too to stand out. So so I ended up matting it. So I could have just done strips of paper, but it does keep it all together. Some of these cut the die completely out, and some are meant to be like edges. Like this is an edge, and like this one cuts out like a ribbon like threader thing. This one is that one right there. It just cuts out and it stays intact, and that one also stays intact. So it's kind of a fun set to have, and if you don't have it, go ahead and use your decorative edge scissors or punches or edge punches, whatever you have to get a very similar look. So I wanted to share this with you because when you cut this out, this is about 5.5 inches, so it'll go through your die machine this way, your standard 6-inch die machine, but it's better if you can send it through this way, because you only have a little bit of pressure. You only have a little bit of the die getting the pressure at once, so it cuts better. But if you're going from a 6.5-inch piece of paper, you can't send it through your die like that, your die cut machine like that. So what you want to do, instead of sending it through straight, you want to tip it a little bit, so you're going at slightly an angle, and then you want to tip the other way, so you're going at a bit of an angle. So in order to do that, because you'll need to go through a couple times, especially if your machine's older like mine, you'll want to tape that down. So I just used a piece of old washi tape to tape that down to my paper, so that it wouldn't move no matter how many times I had to put it through my machine. So we're going to mount this on our paper here. I think that looks really pretty. And I'm just going to use some double-sided tape for this. And I'm just going to give it a couple strips here. And I'm going to center this up on 3 sides at the top. And I love this because it just fills up that extra amount of space. Oh, I didn't center that very well. Don't press it down really good until you've decided that you have indeed centered it up properly. That's pretty good. That's good enough. And now I want to figure out where I want my little acorn to go. I kind of like it there. I think there's a little gap, like a more space that can be used. So now what I'm going to do is just kind of set that there and set my circle cutter on top. This is an old Creative Memories circle cutter. If you have another brand, a punch would work really well actually, but I don't have any big circle punches, so this is going to have to do. And now I am going to, I used my little template to figure out how big of a circle this was going to make. This one with this template will make that size circle. So, you know, you might just you know, double check before you do it to your actual card. And just be careful not to let your card slip as you go around and do this. Before you move your template, make sure that your paper is cut free. Okay, there we go. Awesome. And now we're going to stick this down here. I have this, like, since I have this lacy area, and I have a really hard time with fine tip glues because I don't use them enough and then they clog up on me, I'm going to use a glue stick here, and I just got a piece of scrap paper under there. So I'm just going to get this lacy part down here with my glue stick. I like these permanent glue sticks. I wouldn't trust it to hold a whole sheet of paper down, but if I had like tissue paper or foil or something, this is the Avery permanent glue stick. I like that. You can get it at any office supply store, and they're not very expensive. I usually can get 3 for $1 or $1.99. So, and don't buy in bulk because I've had so many glue sticks just dry out on me before I even got a chance to use them. So I would just buy them as you need them. There. There, and that's going to be fine for gluing something light, just like that bottom edge. But, you know, for the whole panel, I wouldn't trust it. I will trust my ATG adhesive on my little wooden nickel thing here. And we'll stick that right in the little gap here. And so I just think that's kind of a cool look, you know, that look kind of like the bite taken out. And you could even offset the, like if you wanted to do it before you glued it down and you're really good at measuring and planning, which I am not, you could have it so that your brown layer is a little bit bigger than your white layer, so you've got that matte all the way around. But I'm not that clever. I'm not that mathy, so this is gonna be fine for me. So this one I did lighter colors, kind of like the lighter colors I did on the spring one in the background, because this one I ended up fussing so much with markers. I did markers before I did the inking, and it just took a lot longer, and I thought you might appreciate a quicker version. So so there's that. I think they both are very, very fun and pretty, and I didn't put an occasion on here. You could stamp something there, or you could do a stamp in the middle, or handwrite in the middle what the card is for. And then I just wanted to show you, I took the hearts, like, because you're going to end up with this confetti after you cut this out. I saved the hearts for one of these, and I just used that to decorate the side there, because it's wood grain, a wood grain paper. It just will go with this natural theme. And I used Brambly Rose here to make kind of like a rose archway that we're kind of peeking through and seeing our little squirrel friend there. And I just used shades of pink and purple. So just by changing your colors, you can really change the feel and the look of a rubber stamp set. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this project, I have a list of all the supplies I used in the video description. Check out our sponsor, Rubber Stamp Tapestry. You can find them at pegstamps.com. You can see all of these stamp sets and the 5 stamp sets I designed for them recently. It's been a lot of fun playing with them and seeing your creation. So if you do have a creation you want to share with me, you can tag me at Lindsay Weirich on Instagram, and I would love to see it. And that's it for today. Make sure you use the coupon code in the video description if you do make an order. And until next time, happy crafting!